while we have feminists who are constantly complaining about why society is doing so bad and why women, let's be honest, why women are doing so bad because they don't really care about men, um, yet they don't seem to realize that they can vote and not be drafted, go to war. They can vote and send men to go to war, but that's besides the point. Um, and then we also have black pill men who are constantly complaining about why women suck and why women have no virtues anymore, which is all the more true, right? Most women here in the States don't have these virtuous traits, these traditional values that a lot of us would really love to have in a woman. The thing is that no one has these things. Nobody. Can I cook a meal from scratch? Yes. Can I go and gut and clean things? I can figure it out. I've I've gutted things. I've cleaned things. I used to hunt. I would still like to go and hunt. You know, Unfortunately, there's not really a whole lot of places around here to go and hunt that I would really trust. So I haven't been hunting in a while, but I have been fishing, right? And I've cleaned, I've gutted my own game, and that's nothing that I can't really do, right? Because I've done it before, right? So these, but to the level that a lot of these traditional women outside of the states can do, I don't believe even I can do that. That takes a level of skill that must be taught from generation to generation. And unfortunately, I wasn't one of those who was taught that, right? Um, I can definitely do what I can, you know. But as far as cleaning things and gutting things to not to or excuse me to make sure that people don't get sick, that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. Uh, and That's definitely something that I'm going to look into and better myself about as well. But Listen, these traits hardly anybody has, especially here in the West, because we've been so privileged, because we've lived such a luxurious lifestyle compared to other parts of the world who still have to rely on these skills. We've lost touch with reality so much. And I mean, we've become so far confused. And partly because we've been taught to be confused. I mean, if that makes sense, and I'll break this down. Um, our social elites, or our elites of the society, have taught us things to make us confused, relationships wise, work wise, education wise, almost every single thing. We've been told that relationships can survive just off of love alone, that you don't need to be anybody but yourself. And that's not how reality is. You must act a certain way depending on what you are. If you're a man, you have to act a certain way. If you're a woman, you have to act a certain way, especially coming together in a relationship, right? When you're working, you have to act a certain way. A lot of a lot of people just want to go, they want to get their bread, they want to go home. The thing is, you cannot separate personal life from work life. Can't do it. You can try, but it's just not going to happen. Why? Because you leave your personal life to go collect resources to then come back to your personal life. That's why you can't separate that. That's why that's why I also tell you that it's also why you cannot separate religion from politics. Religion has always been a part of politics. You look in our founding documents, religion is based in that. Or excuse me, the religion is the basis of it. That's what I meant to say. You look at the Roly, you look at the Holy Roman Empire. and you see this exact thing, right? But it's also a part of what makes the rules, right? And the social class up at the top, the elites are the ones that always makes the rules because they have the resources, they have the influence, they have the power. This is what I was talking about in my haves and the have-nots video. Um, you have you have these corporatocracies who have really sprung up in uh, less than 150 years, really, and they've monopolized the oil industry, they've monopolized the gas industry, the factories, all of the coal industry is a really big one. You have you have all of these corporatocracies who have offshored their services. They have offshored so many jobs, and also at the expense of us, the middle class. So a lot of that's been eradicated. I was telling you guys that the average pay here in America is 39,000 a year. Average meaning most people only make 39,000 a year. While a family of four we need to make 170,000 to 200,000 a year. Well above the average bracket. So how can anyone survive off of that? And you can imagine if you were only to have one kid, right? What would that be? What, 10, 20,000 less? That's still well above the bracket. No one can afford a family. Hell, me as a disabled veteran, I can barely support myself and my dog, let alone taking on a woman or a family. That's why I'm not trying to date at all. Because I'm not in the financial situation to where I can provide for a family. But then most of us, we want to. We want to be able to provide for a family, right? Most men, or I would say a good portion, I wouldn't say most men, but I would say a good portion of men want to be able to be the head of household, to provide for a family, to do the things that, men must do in life. And women are the same thing. Most, a lot of, not again, not most, but a lot of women here in the West, anyways, would love to be stay-at-home wives. Would love to not have to go to work and work 8 to 12 hours a day just to come back home and take care of the house, or to have some kind of compromising agreements or situation where both the man and woman are compromising on that. And it creates so much stress. So it's really no wonder why a lot of people aren't getting married. They're not having kids. They're not buying their first home, let alone that. They're living with their parents if they can live with their parents until they're like 30, 35, until they can find somewhat of a decent paying job. And when you're looking for jobs, hardly any of them pay anything at all. When I was job hunting, the most that people would pay around here was like 18 an hour. You can't survive off of 18 an hour. I've tried. It's not doable. You can't do it. So, and then a family on top of that. People are stressed. People are frustrated. People are outright angry. But again, this is where the elites of society have come into play. Is that they've convinced us to point the finger at each other, right? We're all suffering. All of us. We're we're all suffering. And it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter who you are. All of us are suffering. All of us are being taken advantage of. All of us are being left behind. The Palisades fire was a really good example of that. Look at how many people lost their homes. How, how many people lost their livelihoods, everything that they had, and hardly anything was done about it. Whether you voted red or blue, it doesn't matter. Women are, and because of this, women are defaulting to their bodies, selling themselves online, on OnlyFans, uh on the hub, and then men are defaulting to their manual labor and aggression, violence, such as military or law enforcement, or going out there and uh, getting jobs in lumber or construction, right? Very grueling, very physically demanding work. Why? Because it pays. Sex sells, and physical labor sells too. And the only way you can ever really make it today is if you can, get into a trade that will eventually give you an opportunity to start your own business. For those of you who don't want to start businesses or don't have the entrepreneurial mindset, don't really care to have an entrepreneurial mindset, you can still make a decent living just on the trades. You just have to work at it for a while. You know, put five years into it, and become what, a journeyman. I think it's a journeyman for 5 years, um, or maybe that's something else. It might be after the first year or two. I can't remember, but the point is that you're gonna have to put quite a bit of time into things in a trade to be able to make a decent life for yourself, and that's the only thing that really pays. And somewhat, right? The cost of living is continuing to go up. I mean, for groceries for the week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm spending you know $100 just on me and my dog, right? And if I bought for the next couple weeks, I think I'd go maybe 150. And you would think that, well, that's not so bad. Think about it long term. Think about it over the month. That's $500-600 a month. You know, I'll be modest and say about $400-600 a month. That costs. I mean, and you can imagine on top of a family. And this is why I was talking about the 170,000 to 200,000 a year. No one can afford this, and because of that, we slowly see the average person die out. Not because, or I would say not just because of the man woman problem or the red blue problem, but the fact that no one can make enough money to support families. The number one reason for divorce today is because of money, right? Again, we're too stressed out. We're too busy trying to figure out where our next meal is coming from to really even worry about having a family. And then when we do finally have a family, we have to worry about finding a place. And places are astronomically high. When my grandfather bought his house, he bought it for $10,000. And that came with a few acres. I believe that was back in the 70s. Yeah, I believe that was back in the 70s. I bought my house a couple years ago for 180,000. And my house is what, 500 square foot? Not big, not big at all. And then I I do have a backyard, but it's not a huge backyard at all. Not at all. And then you also have private companies that are buying up real estate, and they're taking advantage of people who can't afford their homes. Every time I drive to school, I always see signs of companies offering to buy their houses for asking price or even above asking price, right? So why wouldn't people take advantage of that? Especially if they can afford their mortgages or even rent. So many people are renting today and they can't even afford rent. And it makes sense, because most places at minimum are going to be asking $1,200. I've seen some places ask $2,500. That's insane, man. That's over a mortgage. My mortgage is $1,000. I was lucky enough to get it down to $1,000. All of this is really going to lead to dark places. When people suffer enough, when people starve enough, when people finally really start dropping dead because of starvation, because of the stress, we're going to see some shit really go down. This has been proven time and time again. The French Revolution was a really big example of that. Just saying, guys. Look, we got to get back on track, and the only way that we can really get back on track is that we start bringing this to the mainstream. We force them to talk about it. We force them, right, to start implementing solutions that actually fucking work, and not blame women, not blame men, right? But look at what the real issues are. The middle class doesn't exist anymore, and that's because guess what? The wealthy. The wealthy sucked up every single thing from the middle class, and now that's what has led to the average American making $39,000 a year. You know, big pharma companies made billions of dollars off of the COVID vaccine. And yet no one's talking about it. Except maybe a select few on YouTube, including myself. No one's talking about it, man. And it's not just the wealthy that suffers because they're risking, buying these products. It's the people that are ultimately it's the average person that's ultimately affected by it, because I mean, it's basic economics, supply and demand. There's hardly any supply, right, of monetary value in the hands of the have-nots, the average day American today. So there are opportunities, right? Should you search for them and look for them to make a decent living for yourself. I've come into contact with people that I look up to that have taken these opportunities and have made, decent lives for themselves. And that's an opportunity that I'm taking for myself. Along with, eventually getting to the point to where I can support myself on YouTube, you know. But what do you do for those who don't have an entrepreneurial mindset? I don't really care to have one. I don't have an answer for you. I really don't, because school doesn't really matter at this point, because you go to school for 4 years, right? You get a degree just to be replaced by AI. Now you're tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and you can't even find a job to pay off that debt plus interest, because some company wanted to cut you because guess what? You were the most cost. It's easier to pay a AI program than it is to pay you wages. So now you've wasted 4 years that you can't get back. Now you can't use a degree. Um, and what do you do with that? That's why I was talking about people, uh, you know, doing what the French did. It's going to lead people to do that, right? And people haven't really learned their lesson. This is what happens when you really start hoarding a lot of things for yourselves, is that people eventually get fed up with it. This is why I say that, Karl Marx had he had an idea, because when he was talking about capitalism eventually leading to communism, and don't get me wrong, I hate communism with a passion, but it does explain human nature, because at a point in time, do we want to help others? Yes. But then we also become greedy within ourselves, and then we start hoarding things for ourselves. And that's a no go either. And that's what leads to communism. The really good thing, though, about here in the West, or here in America specifically, is that we have unalienable rights, such as Second Amendment, right? The First Amendment, um, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. We have all these different rights that we can use, right? So it doesn't lead to communism, which, you know, given human nature, that may happen, and it may happen sooner than what we think. That's why I tell you guys, look, train, 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 because if someone is knocking on your door and they want you to get out in the fields, yeah, no, absolutely not. You know, so um, but as of right now, in the current era that we find ourselves in today, there are opportunities that you can take. Right now, it's peaceful, to a certain degree, with the exception of, you know, was it Portland? I think it was Portland, and Chicago and all these other places that have experienced riots and all this different stuff. It's relatively peaceful, right? There's no massive, massive, massive civil unrest that would lead to major conflict, and not as of yet. Uh, but we definitely are on a trajectory for that. And it's definitely going to be the average day person who has had enough of kicking and screaming in the mud, trying to make a decent living for him or her, his or her family, while continuously getting spat on by the elites of the social class. So, yeah, it's it's kind of a situ it's kind of I don't know, man. It's definitely a dark situation for sure. Um, so just do yourselves a service and really start looking for opportunities, especially as men. Guys, look, we must find opportunities. We must, because like I said, there are individuals that depend on us, and so we got to take that seriously. So, um, listen, guys, if this I do want to end up on a good note, right? Because listen, guys, this is why I was talking about potential, right? Realize your potential. Don't sit on things knowing and wishing that you had done something, because that's a terrible regret to live with. You know, everyone has potential within them, right? But you have to realize it, and so don't sit on your hands. Realize it. Okay. I want to see you guys realize it. I want to see you guys be the best men that you can be. All right. So I'll end it there. If you guys happen to have anything that you would like to share, please share in the comment section. If this video helped you out, please support the channel, like, share, and subscribe. Guys, I want to reach this to as many people as possible, especially men, right? Because men are the foundations of families and societies, right? So if we're doing well, society and our families are going to be doing well too. So, um, buck stops, buck starts and stops with us. So, right, we got to keep that in mind. Uh, guys, make sure that you're looking after yourselves, right? As I've said all the way throughout the video, right? Work on yourselves, both mind and body, especially mind. Okay, that's really important. Uh, take care of each other. If someone's having a rough time, help them out. All right. If someone gives you, if someone's calling you 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, pick up the phone, because sometimes one phone call matters. Sometimes one phone call can change a life or save a life. So do your service, do a service to you, do a service to others. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Talk to you guys soon.